It has become one of the most delicate and complex problem of the modern Indian society. Individual relation, that is employees, laborer, and we have employer. Collective relation between employer and labor, especially the trade union. Relation which happens, and these are the parties which are involved in industrial relations. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I'm Abhilash Chandra from the Department of Commerce and Management in Vidhyashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence. Welcome to all the students for the first session of this chapter, that is Industrial Relations. Let me just tell you what exactly this industrial relation is. There are three participants here. The first one is the employer, the second one is the employee, and the third one is the laborer. So here all those three people, they need to have a very good cordial relationship. Now laborer are happy, they'll work for the employer. The employer is happy, now they'll pay good for the laborer. So what exactly the thing is? Somebody should be happy. So that relationship, that means everybody, just understand this. If somebody is happy, what will happen? If everybody are happy and they are working for the productivity, what will happen? That's the reason we go with this chapter called Industrial Relations. Now here, introduction, when we go with industrial relations, what exactly the relations here we need to maintain is? The salary is what the employer should give it to the employees and the laborers. The laborers need to work for the employer. The employee need to manage what exactly the work should be done by the laborer from the employer point of view. Now here when we go, industrial relation is not a very new concept, but it has become one of the most delicate and complex problem of modern Indian society. Now that is what you are supposed to understand. Please do remember that. Nowadays, people maintaining the relation is very difficult. Retaining the employees very difficult. Getting new employees very easy, but training those new employees very difficult. Again, after training, when they start doing the work, again retaining them very difficult. That's why industrial relation, it's not a new concept, but in the modern Indian society, this is what the complex problem is. So industrial progress is important, and it is impossible without labor management cooperation and industrial harmony. So you have a lot of trade unions, isn't it? They'll have a lot of demands. Now the employer cannot fulfill each and every demand laid by the laborers and the employees. But if he does, what happens? If he will not, what happens? That is what we will see in the industrial relations. So here are the types of relationship. What are the types of relationship we see in industrial relation? The first one is the individual relation, that is employees, laborer, and we have employer. Relation between employers with the worker and worker at the place of work, or workers' participation in the management. Now we have studied this worker participation in management, WPM, workers participation in management. So there are two parties here. One is employer, another is the worker. Next is collective bargaining. See, this is what we have studied in the HRM 1 and HRM 2. That is collective bargaining. You do a favor to me, I'll do a favor to you. That is what the collective bargaining is all about. Then we have trade unions. Different trade unions. There are n number of trade unions in India which are registered, and the same way there are so many trade unions which is not registered at all, but still what they do is they pressurize the employer to fulfill the needs of the employees and the laborers. Then we have machinery for settlement of industrial disputes. There are few machineries, in the sense the missionaries are there who will come and who will get this settlement done by the industrial disputes. Machineries for settlement of industrial disputes, the same kind of a thing. Unfair labor practice. Unfair labor practice means two ways you can actually go. The employer is actually exploiting the laborers, or the laborer are exploiting the employer. Individual grievance and disciplinary policy and practice. Industrial relation training, and state participation in industrial relations. So these are the types of relations which we will learn in this particular chapter. So next one we have is the definition of industrial relation. There are n number of people who have gone for a definition of industrial relation. These are the two definitions which I feel it is very suitable for industrial relation. The first one was said by Dale in his book Personnel Management. Personnel means staff. Personnel means staff. Personnel management and industrial relation defines industrial relation or relationship between management and employees or among employee and their organization that arise out of employment. See, when there is no employment, there is no dispute. If there is employment, there is a relationship. Now, according to Lester, industrial relation involves attempt to have workable solution between conflicting objectives and values, between incentives and economic security, between discipline and industrial democracy, between authority and freedom, and between bargaining and cooperation. That means there are two things. You will be getting something like authority, but still there is something called freedom. See, this is what the beautiful definition what Lester have said. Workable solution between conflict. So you will have conflict, you will have solution. So that is what the industrial relationship is. If you have head, you will have a tail in a coin. So it's like the same kind of a thing, right? Next, when we go with the scope, please understand the scope is a 5 marks question which you people will actually, you may get as what a question it is. So relationship between manager and individual worker. The scope is what? Manager with the worker. Collective relation between employer and labor, especially the trade union, because each and every laborer cannot go and talk to the employer. It should be the trade union or the union leader who will go and talk with the employer. The role of government in the regulation of these relationships. Now the government also plays a very important role. That is why we go with the scope of industrial relation, where you have the manager with individual, you have employer with employee, employer with trade union. The same way, the government is also there who will go for regulations. So who are the parties who comes under the industrial relations? We have employers, employee, government. Which are they? Employers, employee, government. Now here, when we go with this, please understand, we have here the employer, the employee, the government. Now government will go for a strict regulation for employer. The employer will go with a strict regulation with employee. Now employee will take advantage what the government has done. So this is what the relation which happens, and these are the parties which are involved in industrial relations. So what exactly the objective of IR is? Objectives of IR, industrial relation. Why do we need industrial relations? The first one is industrial relation does something called, it safeguards the interest of labor and management through mutual understanding and goodwill among those parties in the industry which actively participate in the process of production. So whenever there is something called like factories or industries, that is why it is more focused on industries. What happens is there is a what? Safeguard of laborer as well as the employer. Second is to raise productivity of the industry at the higher level. This is the needed of the day to contribute to the economic development of the country. Why industrial relations should happen? If a country need to develop, you should actually go with more productivity. That is the key here for economic development. To avoid all form of industrial conflict, why do we need relation? A good relation is there should not be any dispute. Should not be any conflict. For eradicating those dispute and conflict, we need a proper industrial relations. To minimize labor turnover and absenteeism. Understand? If I'm not happy, if I'm not satisfied, I will not work in that organization. So we should always have this three things very proper. That is the relation between the employer and employee. Now, if employer and employee relation is proper, the employee will not leave the company or the organization, or the employer will not fire the employee. So what happens is turnover of the labor, it will be reduced. Now, if there is not a proper relation between employer and employee, now employee will not come for the work. So absenteeism is more. So for that we need industrial relations. To minimize the occurrence of strikes, lockouts and gherraus. Now I'll tell you more about this word called gherraus, where a person who is been gherrau is a particular procedure where one person will be attacked by all the other laborers who are not happy, and physically nobody will actually touch him, nobody will abuse him. They'll only do what? They'll surround that person, and that person cannot go anywhere out of the organization. That is what we call that as gherrau. Now here, when industrial relationship is good with employer and employee, now employee will not go for strike and employer will not go for lockdown. So that's the reason we need industrial relations. To encourage and develop trade unions in order to improve workers' collective strength and resolving their problems through collective bargaining. So if you have a proper industrial relation, what happens is the trade union can easily approach the employer. The employer can actually easily approach the trade union. So what happens is there is a collective bargaining. That is what the employer wants. If the laborers does, the employer will give what the laborers want. That is what like collective bargaining. To establish, develop and maintain industrial democracy based on employees' participation. That is here workers' participation management is the same way. So that what happens is there is profit for the industry. To facilitate government control over industries in regulating production and for protecting employment, or where production needs to be regulated in public interest. Now here see, what are the drawbacks of a underdeveloped country or a developing country is production. When the more and more industries are formed in the country, unemployment will be reduced. Unemployment, those people will get employment. When you get more employment, what happens is the per capita of the country will increase, because the people who are unemployed, they have got employment, now they get salary or wages. Next is to check and ensure a healthy and balanced social order in the industry. Now industrial relation, why you need is, this is a star mark here. This is what exactly we need to do. In the 21st century, we also should take care of something called healthy and balanced social order. That is the reason we need to go with industrial relations. So I have covered the meaning, people who will participate, that is employer, employee, government. Then we also went with the scope, and then lastly we went with the objective. Objective is for 10 marks. Please do remember the points which I have given to you people. Write the same points, little more explanation you can go with. You can quote examples like that, because here when we go with the WPM, workers participation management, so that whenever the management needs the workers for a democracy, kind of a democratic things, they're supposed to go. You can quote n number of examples. In the next session I'm going to teach you about the other things about international relations and the industrial relations. There are two, that is international relation as well as industrial relations. So thank you so much. If you have any doubt regarding this session, please do call us. We are always there to help you. I'll see you when I see you.